This video is on the sink basin. I put the type of a water pump on here. I want to show you in just a second how I did that. And I got a low price sink basin. There's a lot of different ones. You can get a small one, a large one. But it was a little bit tricky to get it all mounted in there. And also this sewer connection. I had a little trouble figuring that out because you have to make sure that you have enough distance with your water that this water canister has to be the right height so that when your sewer comes out, you have a downflow into that canister. And some of these canisters are big, some are small, and you have to do a lot of measuring. Make sure that you have this measurement right here between these two walls the right size so that this canister will fit in there, and it has to be the right height so that you have a downflow for your sewer, which means you might have to buy a shorter. It depends on where you put the top of your sink basin. If you put it up a little higher than this windowsill, or if you put it down lower than this windowsill, that's going to affect the height of this and this downflow. So you have to pre-measure everything and make sure you get these measurement rights. Now, I wanted to also talk about on this sink basin, I put in a place for my silverware, but you don't have to do that. That's just something extra that I did. You could just put a cover sheet on here, 1/2 inch or 5/8, to cover the whole thing and not have a hole here for your silverware. You could just put a whole piece on here, cut a place for the door, and your storage of your plates or microwave. You can make this big enough for a microwave. I started to do that. I changed my mind. I went with a hot plate instead, but you could put a microwave in here and then just put a door on it, or you don't even have to put a door. There are easier ways to do it than what I did. Like I said, you could just put a whole piece of wood on the cover of it, cut a door, and then just put a piece of wood in here about halfway out where you could just put it over the wood and down inside there and not have a door. It's just a piece of wood that keeps the stuff from falling out. And you could do the same thing over here. A budget build, for instance, you could just put a 2x2 is what you use for these frame of these of everything. 2x2s and 5/8 is a good selection of plywood, and 2x2s for the skeleton. You could just put a 2x2 across these shelves and not have doors or not have anything other than that to hold it in. Maybe a small piece of plywood up here and just lay things over it and into this opening. That would work just fine if you're in a hurry and don't want to go to a lot of trouble. Maybe you don't want to do the router, and maybe you don't want to route the edges. Maybe you're in a hurry, which is just fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The next thing I'll do, I'm going to show you about this sink and faucet and the height between these water storage bottles. All right, here is the back of my sink basin, and I'm going to show you here. Let me flip the camera. I want to show you how I've done this right here. See, this just pulls off. I siliconed a piece of pipe in there that was the right circumference so that this can just slide right over there, and it just sits on it like that. And then, of course, I had to buy a new silicone water line that goes back in there to my water container. And like I was telling you, you need to make sure that you measure everything properly, because the height of this thing the sewer, it has to have a downflow going into this sewer area, and this is how this connects. You have to drill a hole in this lid so that this will fit down in here. You have to also drill a hole in that other lid so that the water line will go down in there. So be sure that you measure these water jugs, make sure they're the right height, and your sink basin and your sewer connection. You need to make sure all this is going to fit together. Putting this sink basin in, you just have to use a little skill with your jigsaw, drilling it around and cutting it around with your jigsaw, and then I silicone the edge in. Is the way I did it. Seemed to work pretty good, and this has worked perfectly for me. I haven't had any trouble. You actually have to charge this up. It doesn't have a 12 volt or 110. You have to charge it, and it works off of that. But yeah, no problems at all. It works good. I used a 3/4 inch top for the top of mine, and a 1/2 inch divider here. 2x2 is the skeletal part of it. Now, as you can see, I have a area inside under here that I put the alternator charger converter in here with it, and that works good, because I really didn't have enough room or enough wire to go from when I installed that alternator charger. That was the end of the wire right here. I had to route it back across my car. I couldn't find a good place to go through the firewall, and it took up all the wire. So then I had to buy an extender to go the rest of the way, and then down through the bottom of that cabinet, which I cut a hole there. That's the routing of all my wire, down at the bottom of the cabinet, back around through the edge here, or up to 110 volts, or to the alternator. That's the routing of all the wiring, and then back to the back behind the seat. You have to have some way to get all that wiring through there. And you can see the shelf I built for mine, and then there's my hot plate and the breaker for the alternator charger. All that fits in there pretty nicely. Of course, it depends on how you want to do it. Some people say I should have painted this instead of staining it. It's just up to you how you want to finish it, or how in-depth you want to go. You can make it as nice, or you can make it quick. If you're in a hurry, maybe, and come back later and finish it. You just want to get it into place. I thought about doing that myself, but I got involved and decided to do it this way. So it's up to you. Have fun with it. Enjoy your work, and you'll be glad you did. Thank you.